Hello, I'm Semele Sherry of Triple Moon, and the subject that's come up recently for many clients and in talking to other people on the spiritual path really recently is the ego. What is it and how do I overcome it, if you like, which is what the way people usually talk about the ego. So the ego is something that you develop once you incarnate on the planet and your spirit comes into human form. And what happens is, obviously because you're in a material, low vibration world, your spirit is not perfectly at home and is not perfectly acknowledged and recognized from the moment it arrives. And so from that point onwards, your ego comes into being and begins to construct beliefs and values and judgments in order to protect your spirit, to protect your true self. But what happens is, as you get older, that ego, doing its perfect job of protecting your true self, of protecting your spirit, your ego becomes stronger and stronger. It's always acting in defense of you, of your true self, of who you really are, and therefore it's always acting out of fear or sometimes aggression, because attack is the best form of defense at times. And it gets stronger and stronger as you get older and older, so it comes to dominate who you are. So at the point at which you are aware of your true self, of your spiritual self, and you want that to take control, what happens is your ego, again doing its job of protecting you, recognizes that in order for you to do that, you have to dive in to the trauma and the pain that caused the ego to come into being in the first place. And the ego wants to protect you at all times. It doesn't want you to experience that pain again, and therefore it will resist your attempts to connect with the trauma and the pain. And that's where the problem lies. Now, people often talk about the ego in terms of I must repress it, I must squash it, I must overcome it, and almost the ego becomes the enemy. And that's exactly the way to keep it strong, because you're encouraging all those things that keep the ego alive and that created it. You're encouraging fear, you're encouraging defensiveness, you're encouraging a feeling of being attacked. So my advice to you is to have completely the opposite approach, is to approach the ego with love and with acceptance. So recognize and acknowledge the ego for doing the fantastic job it has so far in your life by enabling you to survive, by protecting you. It's helped you to get to where you are, so it's not the enemy, it's been your very best friend. So if you acknowledge love and acceptance of the ego and of the role that it's played in your life, what you want to do is make a friend of it and bring it on side. So the very simple way I do that is I actually have conversations with my ego as I go through my day. And if it pops up, I just say, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of that. And I totally see how through my life that approach that you're trying to encourage me to take has been really useful. But now, coming from my new spiritual awareness and my sense of unity and of love being the ultimate way forward, I can see that that doesn't work for me now. So thank you, I acknowledge what you're doing. Thank you for trying to protect me. But on this occasion, I don't need that. And I'm going to take this approach going forward. So what you do is you're not resisting. Whenever you try and resist something or push it away, you immediately give it strength and it persists. What you resist persists. Whereas if you make a friend of your ego, if you acknowledge the role that it's played in your life and you thank it and you accept it being there, extend love towards it, then what happens is you'll reduce the fear and defensive mechanism of the ego, and it will enable you to dive into the pain and trauma that it holds. That's why it was formed, because it's protecting you from hurt and from trauma. And so if you acknowledge that fear, but reassure the ego that that's no longer necessary, that you're okay, that you know how to look after yourself. But you need to dive into that trauma and that pain with love and compassion. That's the way to get the ego on side, rather than resisting and treating it as the enemy, and you'll just perpetuate the ego's dominance. I hope that helps. Thank you for listening.